I was born in Ontario. I studied design and I studied construction, but I always had this great passion and this interest in studying and figuring out how structural timber and structural steel and glass and stone married and blended together into residential architecture. I actually started Foreshew Design Associates when I was 20, so that was 14 years ago. I started this company in school. So I was going to college and I had the opportunity to work with a general contractor and work with him on designing and bringing the permit drawings to a completed set. During my time in school and working with these contractors and doing these smaller jobs, this is where I learned and grew this affinity for structural timber and structural steel detailing into buildings. During this time and in between classes, I would research who are great timber frame manufacturers in the British Columbia region, even dabbling into the States. I sent out many cold call emails. Didn't get too far, but I did get one opportunity, and that is all I needed. I got an opportunity to move out to Golden, British Columbia and start the design department with a company called Canadian Timber Frames. This was exactly the opportunity that I was looking for, and I jumped at it. I was 22 years old. I packed my car, moved everything out to British Columbia, and started on this amazing career path. Moving out and working with Canadian Timber Frames immersed me in that exact vernacular of architecture that I wanted to learn. This opportunity allowed me to work on larger private residences. It allowed me to work with great architects and really experiencing and learning what it was like to design a private residence. During this time, I really got to know who the architects were that were doing great work in this market, and one really stood out to me. It was Kelly and Stone Architects out of Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I remember many magazines that I would buy and cut out little advertisements that they had and pin them up on my bulletin board, and I knew for some reason, like, these were the guys. These guys had it going on. After a couple years working in this position, I actually got an opportunity to work with a partner at Kelly and Stone Architects to bring the construction documentation to completion for a house in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I was absolutely starstruck when I was starting to work with Tim Stone. He was an architect that I had looked up to. I loved his design style. Everything that that firm was doing, their proportion, was bang on. That project went on for a few months. We completed the construction documentation, sent it to the CNC machine to get the timber frame manufactured, packaged up, and it was gone. I still remember the day I was standing on my deck. I got a call from Tim Stone. He said, "I really like working with you, Alex. I think you should come down to Steamboat Springs and really see what an architecture firm has in store for you." I immediately said yes. So again, packed up all my stuff and made my way down to Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I lived in Steamboat Springs, Colorado for around a year and a half. I worked closely with Tim and I worked closely with his team. And at the end of a year and a half, Tim and his partner Keith They had started a satellite office in Truckee, Northern California, and Lake Tahoe. So I made my way out there to meet Keith and to see what the team had going on in Tahoe. Kelly and Stone Architects had made big inroads into a private residential development in Tahoe named Martis Camp. I think now they've done well over 100 homes in there at that point, but I got to experience and see what those types of private residential homes were. And those, to me, at 25 years old, was the epicenter of where I wanted to get to. During my time in the mountains, I realized that just like the mountains, architecture is an experience. I spent a few months with the Tahoe team, but eventually I did travel back to Ontario. Having lived in a mountain environment around mountain culture for the last 5-6 years had me really feeling like I'm missing a part of my life that I experienced in that mountain culture. And I knew that when I moved back to Ontario, the only area that I knew that was similar was Muskoka, and that's where I wanted to live. Pulling those memories back and understanding that the type of work that I wanted to work on and the type of contractors that I wanted to be partners with, they were all in the Port Carling area. So Port Carling was where I looked for an office. This was in 2016. I had never had an employee before, but that was the year that marked the first employee hire. We're now up to a team of 12. The team is fantastic. I've been fortunate enough to find a partner, and she is an amazing woman. She has an amazing family that also lives locally in the Muskoka area. This is definitely where I see myself for years to come. Even though living in Muskoka, it's amazing, and especially in the summertime, it's absolutely breathtaking. But there is always something from when moving back from British Columbia and Colorado and California that is a missing piece. That mountain living, that mountain aesthetic, it's not necessarily here in Muskoka. I've had many past clients comment on our work, and they don't even know my background at all, and they have said to me, oh, it looks a little bit of Western influence. Well, it definitely is. That's where I learned, that's where I grew my craft, that's where I honed my talent. It means so much to me. I want to pay homage, and I want to reach back into the files, and I want to bring something to Muskoka that Muskoka has never seen before. I want to bring mountain aesthetic and mountain culture to Muskoka. Welcome to Tiehack Haus. Tiehack Haus sits on an elevated property. This house has commanding views of southern Lake Rosso, and we have oriented each main trunk of the home to take in these views. It's around 5,000 square feet. It has a walkout basement, a carport that you can drive through the circular drive. It has an attached garage of around 800 square feet, and this is where my future family and myself will be at home for years to come. The challenges of designing in the mountains are very similar as designing in Muskoka. Both are very rewarding and worth every hour spent in design. Some characteristics that you would see in mountain environments that you would also see in Muskoka would definitely be the steep hills and the terrain that we have to deal with. A lot of custom residential in the mountains are always built on hills. We're always building on slopes towards the lake, which create walkout basements or daylight basements. Mountain environments have a lot of precipitation, especially in the winter. Large overhangs to protect the exterior facade, protect walkways, access points. We don't get as much snow here in Muskoka, but we definitely get some, so why not include those details? Mountain environments, you're always framing a view. You're framing a mountain or framing a forest environment. Here we're doing the exact same thing. Framing lakes, framing views, sunsets. It's very similar. And really, mountain aesthetic, it's raw, it's natural, it's supposed to blend in with its surroundings. What materials that I've designed into this home, they're very raw, they're very natural. You'll see that the siding material that I've chosen is a thermally modified Nordic pine. It's oriented vertically, and I wanted to experiment a little bit, so I wanted to specify 3 different widths of boards and do it in a completely random pattern. If you look at the forest, no 2 trees are the same width. I wanted to mimic this natural phenomenon in the siding facade of our house. Along with the materiality, we also have to imagine and make sure that these specified materials have durability and long-lasting effects. Same thing when designing in a mountain environment. Very harsh, wind, snow, rain, all similar things that we experience here in Muskoka. You'll notice that I have an exposed structural timber frame. This is working with a local craftsman. We're using a western hemlock with a special stain, and everything's going to be tucked underneath an overhang so that it has a long-lasting effect and is protected from the elements. Something that I really wanted to experiment with, I've seen it done before, I have never incorporated it into a project, but you'll notice that surrounding the spa, we have these harvested natural granite boulders that we are going to slice and place in line with the structural steel so that it creates this grotto effect, and it again ties it back to the natural bedrock and the natural surroundings. One thing that you'll notice when you're looking at mountain aesthetic, that most of materiality, it's not hidden or it's not covered, it's exposed. All of the connections, the nuts, the bolts, the knife plate connections, they're all exposed and readily available to touch and feel and experience. I wanted to bring that essence and bake it into this design so it's a true unobstructed experience when moving through this home. We incorporated these structural steel elements that are also very much decorative. You'll notice that around the entire lower section of this house that we've introduced a natural stone veneer on this facade. This natural stone is local to the area, so it will be a granite. We'll be working with a local craftsman to create this look and create a dry stack so no mortar will be used, and it ties back to everything that I see in the mountain environments, and I'm sure it will be beautiful at the end of the day. I am going to be speccing a zinc-plated standing seam, and we're actually going to be incorporating an oversized ridge vent which has a different material on it. This different material is an A606 weathering steel, and we will be pre-weathering it so that it turns a brown or a rust color so that we have a different contrast with the roof materials. One detail that I'm extremely excited about is the ridge skylight. We have 2 ridge skylights in this project. We have one over the carport and we have one in the living room. I envision that when moving around and living within this house, you're able to capture natural light all day long, and you're almost allowing to peel back the backbone of this house and see the exposed skeleton of this exposed timber and this exposed steel ridge beam. It's going to be lit up at the end of the day, and I think it's going to be an extraordinary detail. You'll notice an interesting element with the double-barrel chimney design. I have seen this detail used in different areas and in different ways, and I wanted to incorporate it into the house. With the exposed structural steel beam and the exposed structural timber frame inside, I'm actually straddling the steel beam with these two chimney flues, which will both be operable, and I think it's an awesome detail that will be really cool at the end of the day. This property is 6 acres, so naturally, and just with every project that we take on at Foreshew Design Associates, we start with the master planning stage. I do have ideas for a home office that will be located with elevated views of Lower Lake Rosso, and I also have ideas for a detached garage that I can experiment with different materials for future projects and future clients. Having the privilege to design this home and also be able to incorporate my past with my mountain experience and bring this forward to share it with my future family is something that makes me feel very blessed, and I'm excited to embark on this journey and showcase everything that I have learned in my past and make it a masterpiece in Muskoka. One of the main aspects that we bake into all of our designs, and a huge ask of many clients, is how do we accentuate and bring family together to make memories? This is exactly what we're doing with this property and this home. One of the reasons why we purchased this property, not only for its amazing views, but also proximity to Port Carling's town, our office, and my future in-laws' family cottage. We see this property and the attachment of ours as a great compound estate for future kids to be around their grandparents at all times, experience lake life and everything that Muskoka has to offer.